Zex stared at the small human dormitory room, with all three of his eyes blinking rapidly. His purple tentacles twitched nervously as he adjusted the universal translator attached to his neck membrane. The Earth University exchange program had seemed like a brilliant idea when he was back on Cylon 7, but now, facing the reality of living with a human roommate, he wasn't so sure. "So, you're my alien roommate." Jake Thompson stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying his best not to stare at Zex's bioluminescent spots that pulsed with anxiety. "Affirmative. I am Zexillophorius Beta 9, but you may call me Zex. I have studied your Earth customs extensively through your entertainment broadcasts." Zex's translator squeaked with enthusiasm. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Entertainment broadcasts? You mean TV shows?" "Yes. Friends. How I Met Your Mother. The Bachelor. Most educational programs about human mating rituals and social bonding." Zex's spots turned a bright pink with excitement. Jake groaned internally. Great. His alien roommate had learned about humans through reality TV and sitcoms. This was going to be interesting. "Right. Well, let me help you unpack," Jake offered, pointing to the strange crystalline containers that Zex had brought. He immediately regretted his offer when one of the containers made a growling sound. "Oh, no concern needed. That is just my breakfast. It needs to ferment for another 3 Earth cycles," Zex explained cheerfully, patting the container with a tentacle. "It only bites strangers once." Jake took a careful step back. "Good to know. So, what's your major?" "Human biological sciences with a focus on reproduction and pair bonding," Zex announced proudly, his translator barely keeping up with his excited clicking sounds. Jake almost choked on air. "You're studying what now?" "Your species' methods of continuing genetic lines are fascinating. So inefficient yet so complex. The chemical cocktail you call love. Simply amazing." Zex's middle eye widened with scientific enthusiasm, while his other 2 eyes scanned the room, probably taking mental notes. Moving to his side of the room, Jake began unpacking his own stuff, trying to act normal while an alien analyzed human reproduction patterns. He put up his favorite basketball poster and arranged his textbooks on the desk. "Oh, sports activities, physical prowess display for potential mates," Zex asked, scribbling something in a holographic notebook that appeared from one of his tentacles. "What? No, I just like basketball," Jake explained, already feeling exhausted from the conversation. "Look, Zex, maybe we should set some ground rules." "Rules? Yes, I have studied dormitory protocols." Zex's spots turned a serious shade of blue. "No unauthorized dissections, no mind melding without consent, and no releasing interdimensional entities after quiet hours." Jake blinked. "I was thinking more like, knock before entering. Keep your side clean and normal roommate stuff. But yeah, those two. Definitely no dissections." "Fascinating. Humans have such specific social requirements." Zex made more notes. "Question. When your potential mate visits, should I collect data samples or merely observe from a distance?" "Neither," Jake said quickly, his face turning red. "No observing, no samples, nothing like that. And I don't even have a girlfriend right now." "No mate? But according to friends, humans your age should be actively pursuing multiple potential partners in your local coffee shop." Zex's spots turned a confused yellow. Jake sat down on his bed, running a hand through his hair. "TV isn't real life, Zex. Maybe you should learn about humans by actually talking to them. You know, make some friends." Zex's spots suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. Friends? Real human friends. Not just study subjects. All 3 of his eyes focused on Jake with intense hope. Looking at his alien roommate's excited expression, Jake felt his initial reservations starting to fade. Sure, Zex was weird, but he seemed genuinely curious and friendly, in his own scientifically obsessed way. "Yeah, why not? We could start with being friends," Jake offered with a smile. "Just No weird experiments, okay? Agreed. No weird experiments. Zex's tentacles wiggled happily, though perhaps small data collection. For scientific purposes only. No data collection, Jake said firmly, but he couldn't help chuckling. Very well, Zex agreed, though one of his tentacles was still secretly holding a scanner behind his back. This will be the beginning of a most fascinating cultural exchange. As Jake helped Zex arrange his remaining belongings, carefully avoiding the growling container, he had a feeling this semester would be anything but boring. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of what would become the strangest and most interesting friendship of his life. 3 weeks into the semester, Zex was perched upside down on his ceiling-mounted study pod, installed after getting special permission from the university, when Jake walked in with a girl. All 3 of Zex's eyes snapped to attention, his spots turning a bright shade of investigative orange. "Sarah, this is my roommate, Zex," Jake said, gesturing upward. "Zex, this is Sarah from my chemistry class. Greetings, potential mate of Jake Thompson." Zex descended from his pod using his tentacles, his universal translator buzzing with excitement. "I have been eager to observe human courtship rituals up close." Sarah blinked, then laughed. "Potential mate? Jake, you didn't tell me your alien roommate was so funny." Jake's face turned red. He's not joking. He's studying human relationships for his degree. "Zex, Sarah's just my lab partner, not my potential mate. But your hormonal levels have increased by 23.7% since she entered the room," Zex pointed out helpfully, waving a small beeping device. "And your body temperature has risen too." "Okay," Jake interrupted quickly. "Sarah and I need to work on our chemistry project in the study lounge right now." After they left, Zex pulled out his holographic research journal, adding new notes with multiple tentacles at once. Earth date, September 23rd. Subject appears to be in denial about obvious mating intentions. Female specimen shows signs of amusement, rather than offense at mating observations. Possible courtship strategy. Must investigate further. Over the next few days, Zex became increasingly fascinated by Jake and Sarah's interactions. He started keeping a detailed log of their study sessions, noting every laugh, accidental touch, and awkward moment of eye contact. During one particularly interesting observation, Zex was pretending to read a book, held upside down, while Jake and Sarah worked on their project. "Your chemical equation is wrong," Sarah pointed out, leaning close to Jake's notebook. "No way," Jake argued, but he was smiling. "Show me." Zex's spots pulsed with scientific excitement as he watched Sarah lean even closer to Jake. His third eye zoomed in on their hands, which were nearly touching on the textbook. "Fascinating," Zex whispered to himself, all his tentacles wiggling with enthusiasm. The proximity triggers notable physiological responses in both specimens. Unfortunately, he whispered this directly into his active translator. Jake and Sarah looked up. "Are you taking notes on us?" Sarah asked, noticing the floating holographic journal beside Zex. "Merely scientific observation," Zex assured them, quickly hiding his hormone-detecting scanner behind his back. "Please, continue your pre-mating ritual as if I'm not here." "Pre-mating? Jake." Sarah stood up, her cheeks pink. "You said he'd stop doing this." "I thought he had." Jake shot Zex an exasperated look. "Zex, we talked about this." But Zex was too excited to be deterred. "I have a hypothesis. Based on my research of human entertainment media, this is the perfect moment for what you call a kiss. Should I dim the lights? Release appropriate pheromones? I brought samples from 7 different earth flowers." Sarah gathered her books quickly. "I'll see you in class, Jake. Good luck with your research, Zex." After she left, Jake fell face first onto his bed with a groan. "Zex, you can't keep doing this." "But Jake," Zex descended from his pod, his spots now a concerned purple. How will I complete my thesis on human reproduction without proper field research? Maybe study willing participants, or read actual scientific papers instead of watching rom-coms, Jake suggested into his pillow. But willing participants would skew the data. Natural observation is key. Zex pulled out a complex diagram he'd made of Jake and Sarah's interaction patterns. Look, I've already mapped out your probable courtship timeline based on various media examples. Jake sat up and looked at the diagram. His eyes widened. Is that a wedding date? And predicted offspring characteristics. Zex added proudly, I've calculated a 67.3% chance of brown eyes, and that's it. Jake stood up. We need to have a serious talk about boundaries, and maybe get you a different research topic. But Zex had already turned to his research station, muttering excitedly about human denial patterns and resistance to obvious biological imperatives. His spots were flashing rapidly as he added more notes to his ever-growing study. Jake watched his alien roommate with a mixture of frustration and amusement, wondering how he was going to explain any of this to Sarah in their next chemistry class. Meanwhile, Zex was already planning his next observation session, completely oblivious to the social chaos he was creating. Late one night, when Jake was fast asleep, Zex quietly unpacked the package that had just arrived from his home planet. His spots glowed a dim purple to provide just enough light to work by as he assembled the complex device, his tentacles moving with precise efficiency. The Cylonian Love-O-Meter 3000 will revolutionize my research, he whispered to his translator, which he had thankfully set to minimum volume. Finally, accurate readings of human mating potential. The machine looked like a cross between a lava lamp and a microscope, with several pulsing crystals and what appeared to be a small satellite dish on top. Zex had ordered it from the Galactic Science Supply Catalog, using 3 months of his study stipend. The next morning, Jake woke up to find his alien roommate pointing the strange device at him. Zex. Jake pulled his blanket up. What are you doing? Morning scans show elevated dopamine levels, Zex announced excitedly. Were you perhaps dreaming about Sarah? That's it. Jake threw his pillow at Zex, who caught it with 2 tentacles while still taking readings. We talked about this. No scanning me while I sleep. But the data, Jake. The data. Zex's spots turned an argumentative shade of orange. How else can I understand the chemical processes of human attraction? Before Jake could answer, there was a knock at their door. Zex immediately turned his Love-O-Meter toward it, the crystals pulsing rapidly. Fascinating. 2 humans approaching, both with elevated hormone levels, Zex announced. Jake opened the door to find Sarah and her roommate Emma standing there. Hey, we brought coffee and donuts, Sarah said, then noticed the strange device Zex was pointing at them. What's that? The Cylonian Love-O-Meter 3000, Zex proclaimed proudly. It measures compatibility potential, pheromone levels, and even predicts optimal mating seasons. Would you like a free scan? Emma nearly choked on her coffee while Sarah turned bright red. Jake quickly stepped between them and Zex's machine. No one's getting scanned, Jake insisted. Zex, put that away. But Zex was already taking readings, his third eye widening with excitement. Oh, most interesting. Sarah, your biochemical response to Jake's presence shows a 78.3% match with traditional human romantic attraction patterns. The room fell silent. Sarah stared at her coffee cup, her face getting even redder. Jake wished the floor would open up and swallow him whole. And Emma. Zex continued, oblivious to the awkwardness. Your readings indicate potential compatibility with approximately 47% of the human males in this dormitory. Shall I provide a numbered list? I think we should go, Emma said quickly, grabbing Sarah's arm. Good luck with your research. After they left, Jake turned to Zex. You have to stop this. You're making everyone uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. But discomfort is a common sign of attraction according to human media. Zex consulted his holographic notes. In fact, my research suggests that awkward moments often lead to romantic realizations in 73.2% of cases. Jake sat down on his bed, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Real life isn't like your research, Zex. You can't just scan people and predict their relationships. Zex's spots dimmed slightly. But my methods are purely scientific. Look at these charts. Several holographic graphs appeared, showing complex patterns of what appeared to be heart rates, hormone levels, and something labeled cosmic love potential. I've even begun experimenting with different environmental factors. Zex continued enthusiastically, using his tentacles to pull out various items. Romantic music samples, synthetic pheromones, and this fascinating Earth invention called mood lighting. Jake noticed for the first time that their room was full of hidden sensors, small crystal containers of mysterious liquids, and what looked suspiciously like heart-shaped decorations tucked behind Zex's study pod. Were you planning to turn our room into some kind of love laboratory? Jake asked, horrified. Of course not. Zex's spots turned an innocent shade of blue. It's already been one for the past week. The results have been most promising, especially when Sarah visits. Jake fell back on his bed with a groan. Meanwhile, Zex continued adjusting his love-o-meter, muttering about perfect experimental conditions and breakthrough research potential. His translator occasionally picked up phrases like Nobel Prize and revolutionizing human dating. Little did either of them know, Zex's most ambitious experiment was yet to come, and it would change everything. Though perhaps not in the way his scientific mind expected. Jake knew something was very wrong when he found Zex floating upside down in his containment pod, all three eyes focused on multiple holographic screens displaying what looked like romantic movie scenes, while his tentacles frantically took notes. Zex, what are you doing now? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Conducting critical research. Zex's spots pulsed with intense concentration. After analyzing 247 Earth romance movies, I have isolated the key components for successful human mating. Jake noticed several new strange devices scattered around their room. What are all these things? Experimental equipment. Zex descended from his pod excitedly. This one creates artificial rain for dramatic confession scenes. He pointed to a suspicious-looking cloud machine. And this generates background music for romantic moments. A small crystal began playing what sounded like a poorly mixed combination of every love song ever written. Turn that off. Jake covered his ears. And what's that smell? Ah. Zex's spots turned a proud pink. A custom blend of earth pheromones. I combined roses, chocolate, and something called new car smell, all scents your species finds attractive. Just then, Sarah walked in without knocking, carrying some chemistry notes. She immediately started coughing from the overwhelming smell. What's going on here? She asked between coughs. Perfect timing. Zex's spots turned bright yellow with excitement. Subject B has arrived. Initiating experiment 47B. Before anyone could react, Zex activated several devices at once. The cloud machine started producing a light drizzle. The music crystal played a deafening mix of romantic soundtracks, and small robots, when had he built those, began scattering rose petals everywhere. Zex, stop, Jake yelled, trying to dodge the indoor rain. But the conditions are perfect. Zex insisted, his tentacles working multiple control panels. According to my research, unexpected rain plus romantic music equals spontaneous declarations of love in 89% of cases. Sarah, now slightly wet and covered in rose petals, found Jake's research notebook on his desk. But instead of chemistry notes, she found something else. Jake, what's this? To Jake's horror, she was holding Zex's holographic research journal, which he disguised as Jake's notebook. It was displaying page after page of detailed observations about Sarah's visits, including charts tracking their increasing romantic potential and predictions about their inevitable courtship. That's not mine. Jake tried to explain. It's Zex's research. Research? Sarah's eyes widened as she read more. There are diagrams of our future house here, and names for potential offspring. Most scientifically calculated names, Zex added helpfully, based on your genetic compatibility and current Earth naming trends. I can explain, Jake started, but at that moment, the cloud machine malfunctioned, creating a small indoor storm. As they all scrambled to shut off the equipment, Sarah slipped on the wet floor. Jake caught her just as Zex's romantic background music reached a dramatic crescendo. Yes, perfect execution of the romantic catch scenario. Zex's spots flashed triumphantly. Now, according to my research, you should gaze deeply into each other's eyes for approximately 7.4 seconds before. Zex. Both Jake and Sarah shouted. Observing in silence now, Zex retreated to his pod, but his spots still pulsed with scientific excitement as he recorded everything. Sarah stood up, brushing off rose petals. Jake, we need to talk about your roommates. Research. I know, I'm so sorry, Jake began. I tried to stop him, but he's just really dedicated to understanding human romance. Sarah finished, and to Jake's surprise, she was trying not to laugh. I found his notes about our obvious mutual attraction in my chemistry book last week. You did. Jake felt his face getting hot. Mum. Including a very detailed analysis of how often we look at each other during class. She was definitely smiling now. Apparently, it's 47% more than strictly necessary for lab partners. From his pod, Zex's spots turned a bright shade of vindication. The data never lies, he declared triumphantly. Looking at the chaos around them, the malfunctioning rain machine, scattered rose petals, and their soaking wet clothes, Jake and Sarah finally burst out laughing. So, Sarah said, wringing water from her hair, should we discuss these findings over coffee? Somewhere far away from any alien research equipment? Negative, Zex quickly interjected. My data clearly shows that wet clothes and close proximity create optimal conditions for. Coffee sounds great, Jake said loudly, grabbing his jacket and hurrying Sarah toward the door, leaving their alien matchmaker recording successful experimental results in his pod. Zex sat in Dean Anderson's office, his spots a nervous shade of purple, while Jake and Sarah stood nearby. The dean was examining a thick folder labeled Unauthorized Xenobiological Research Activities. So, the dean adjusted her glasses. You turned your dorm room into a love laboratory. For science, Zex's tentacles twisted anxiously. My research on human mating rituals was showing such promising results. Promising results. The dean raised an eyebrow. You flooded 3 floors with your rain machine. Minor experimental complications, Zex explained, his translator squeaking with nervousness. But look at the success rate. He projected a holographic chart showing Jake and Sarah's relationship progress. Zex, Sarah stepped forward. I think it's time we had an honest talk about human relationships. But my research, Zex's middle eye blinked sadly, has been based on movies and TV shows. Jake finished. Real relationships don't work like that. The dean nodded. Mr. Zexiliforius Beta 9, while your academic enthusiasm is admirable, your methods have been concerning. The love-o-meter alone violated 17 university privacy policies, not to mention the mood-altering crystals in the cafeteria food, Sarah added. That was you. Jake turned to Zex. Is that why the entire football team started serenading the chess club last week? Zex's spots turned a defensive orange. The results were statistically significant. 2 chess players are now dating linebackers. The dean held up a hand. Enough. Clearly, you need a new approach to your research. But how will I complete my thesis? All 3 of Zex's eyes drooped. My understanding of human romance is clearly flawed, despite my extensive media research and experimental protocols. Sarah sat down next to the alien student. Zex, relationships aren't about experiments and protocols. They're about genuine connections between people. Like how Sarah and I became friends in chemistry class, Jake added. No love meters or rain machines needed. But Zex pulled up his research notes. What about the romantic music? The dramatic confessions in the rain? The carefully calculated moments of eye contact? Those things happen in movies, Sarah explained gently. Real relationships develop naturally. Jake and I started dating because we enjoyed spending time together, not because of your experiments. Zex's spots suddenly turned bright white with realization. You are dating? When did this occur? My instruments didn't record the exact moment of pair bond formation. After the flood incident, Jake smiled. When we went for coffee, we talked for hours about real things. Our families, our dreams, our favorite books. No experiments needed. Fascinating. Zex's tentacles began typing rapidly, so the flooding was successful after all. No, the dean interrupted firmly. That's not the lesson here. The lesson, Sarah explained, is that you can't force or manufacture relationships. They have to develop on their own. Zex was quiet for a moment, all three eyes blinking thoughtfully. Then his spots turned a soft blue of understanding. So my research methodology was fundamentally flawed. I was so focused on the external factors that I missed the internal emotional components. Exactly. Jake nodded. Real relationships are about feelings, not formulas. But feelings are so imprecise. Zex protested. How do you measure them? How do you quantify emotional attachment rates? You don't. Sarah laughed. That's what makes them special. The dean closed her folder. Mr. Zexiliforius Beta 9, I'm assigning you a new thesis topic. Understanding human relationships through personal experience rather than experimentation. And no more love meters, Jake added quickly. Or ray machines, Sarah agreed. Or mood-altering crystals in the cafeteria. Zex asked hopefully. Especially not those, the dean said firmly. As they left the office, Zex's spots had turned a contemplative shade of blue. I believe I require a complete restructuring of my research methods. How about you start by just hanging out with us? Jake suggested. As friends. No experiments, no observations. Just social interaction. Without scientific documentation. Zex's tentacles twisted anxiously. Exactly, Sarah smiled. Though you might learn more that way than you did with all your machines. Zex considered this for a moment. Then his spots brightened. Perhaps this new methodology does warrant investigation. But may I keep just one small scanner? For emergency data collection only. No scanners, Jake and Sarah said together. As they walked back to the dorm, Zex secretly made one final note in his holographic journal. Hypothesis. True understanding of human relationships may require experiencing them rather than studying them. Beginning new phase of research, as a friend. The university auditorium was packed with students and faculty from both Earth and various alien worlds. Zex stood at the podium, his spots glowing a professional shade of blue, as he prepared to present his revised thesis. Thank you all for attending my presentation. The Real Science of Human Relationships. A Personal Journey of Discovery. Zex's translator announced clearly. Jake and Sarah sat in the front row, giving him encouraging thumbs up. When I first arrived on Earth, Zex continued, his tentacles managing the holographic displays. I believe I could understand human relationships through experiments and data collection. He showed an image of his old love laboratory, causing several professors to shake their heads. I created complex machines. A picture of the love-o-meter appeared, drawing laughs from the audience. I developed elaborate theories based on Earth media. He displayed his old charts and romance movie analysis, making Jake cringe at the memory. But I was wrong. Zex's spots turned a humble shade of purple. Completely and utterly wrong. The audience leaned forward, especially the alien students who had been following Zex's infamous research attempts all semester. Through my failed experiments, I learned something far more valuable than any data could provide. Zex's middle eye focused on Jake and Sarah. I learned that real relationships cannot be measured, predicted, or manufactured. He played a brief video compilation of his various experimental disasters: the indoor rainstorm, the cafeteria serenade incident, and the notorious love-o-meter malfunction that had temporarily turned all the dorm's lights pink. These failures taught me that I was asking the wrong questions, Zex explained. Instead of how do humans find mates, I should have asked, how do humans connect? His presentation shifted to show images of simple moments: students laughing in the cafeteria, friends studying together, couples walking across campus. Through my own friendships, he gestured to Jake and Sarah, I discovered that human relationships are built on shared experiences, genuine emotions, and most importantly, trust, none of which can be measured by any device, no matter how advanced. Professor Johnson, head of xenobiology, raised her hand. But surely there must be some scientific principles governing human attraction. Oh, certainly. Zex's spots brightened. Human biology plays its part, but I learned that focusing solely on the science means missing the magic. Magic isn't very scientific, noted an alien student from the third row, their antennae twitching skeptically. Precisely. Zex's tentacles moved excitedly. That's what makes human relationships so fascinating. They defy our logical analysis. They cannot be predicted by formulas or induced by experiments. He showed a final slide. A simple photo of Jake and Sarah studying together, completely unaware they were being photographed. This moment, Zex explained, contained more real romance than all my elaborate experiments combined. And I took this picture before I even realized what I was seeing. But how do you study something you can't measure? Another student asked. By participating. Zex's spots turned bright with enthusiasm. My revised research methodology involved simply being a friend, watching, learning, and experiencing human connections firsthand. He displayed his new findings, not charts and graphs, but observations about friendship, trust, and genuine emotional connections. I learned that a simple conversation over coffee contains more valuable data than 1,000 scanner readings. The audience was captivated, especially when Zex showed the difference between his old research notes, full of technical jargon and experimental protocols, and his new ones, filled with personal insights and actual understanding. In conclusion, Zex's spots turned a confident gold. I now understand that the true science of human relationships isn't about controlling variables or collecting data. It's about understanding the beautiful unpredictability of emotional connections. The applause was thunderous. Even the dean was smiling. After the presentation, as students and faculty congratulated him, Zex noticed a young alien student looking at his old love-o-meter with interest. Don't even think about it, Zex advised, his spots twinkling with amusement. Trust me, you'll learn more by simply talking to humans than by scanning them. But your initial research methods seem so thorough, the student protested. Yes, and they thoroughly failed, Zex laughed. Sometimes the best scientific discovery is learning what not to do. Jake and Sarah joined him, both grinning. Great presentation, Zex, Sarah said. Though I notice you didn't mention the time you tried to release love potion into the ventilation system, Jake added with a smirk. Some experimental data is better left classified. Zex's spots turned a slightly embarrassed pink, but he was happy. He had finally understood something his machines never could: the true nature of human connections. 6 months after his groundbreaking presentation, Zex sat in the university coffee shop, all three eyes focused on his new research project. His spots glowed a peaceful blue as he observed the casual interactions around him. No scanners or experiments in sight. Mind if I join you? A melodic voice chirped through a universal translator. Zex looked up to see Lyra, an exchange student from the crystalline world of Luminara. Her bioluminescent patterns sparkled in a way that made his spots pulse with unexpected warmth. Please do. Zex moved his tentacles to clear space at his table. I was just working on my new thesis about genuine alien-human friendships. I saw your previous presentation. Lyra's crystal facets shimmered with amusement. The infamous love laboratory experiments. Oh no, Zex's spots turned embarrassed pink. You heard about those. Everyone heard about them, she chimed musically. Especially the singing football players, but I found your conclusions fascinating. Meanwhile, at a nearby table, Jake and Sarah watched the interaction with growing interest. Should we help him? Sarah whispered. He looks nervous. After all the help he gave us, Jake grinned. Let's see how he handles his own romantic situation. Zex was indeed struggling. For the first time, he understood why humans got tongue-tied in such situations. All his previous research seemed useless now. So, he managed, his translator squeaking slightly. What brings you to Earth University? I'm studying Earth art and music, Lyra responded. There's something beautifully chaotic about human creativity. It can't be measured or quantified. Just like their relationships. Zex finished excitedly, then immediately wished he hadn't. I mean, that is, would you like some coffee? We don't drink coffee, Lyra reminded him gently, her crystals twinkling with laughter. Right. Of course. I knew that. Zex's spots were now cycling through every shade of embarrassment. Perhaps some mineral water with light energy infusion. From their table, Jake and Sarah tried not to laugh too obviously at their friend's awkward attempts at conversation. Remember when he tried to calculate our optimal dating trajectory? Sarah whispered to Jake. Now look at him. Can't even follow his own scientific protocols. Jake chuckled. But to everyone's surprise, Lyra seemed charmed by Zex's nervous energy. Her crystalline structure was glowing with warm colors that matched his anxious spots. You know, she said, I heard about an Earth music concert happening tonight. Would you like to experience some chaotic human creativity together? Zex's spots lit up like fireworks. Yes. For research purposes, of course. Of course, Lyra agreed, her crystals sparkling. Purely academic interest. As they made plans, Jake and Sarah finally came over to their table. Need any scientific equipment for your date? Jake teased. I think the love-o-meter is still in storage. This is not a date. Zex protested, his spots betraying his excitement. It's a collaborative research opportunity. With dinner after, Lyra suggested innocently. Yes, I mean, if that would help the research. Zex's tentacles were tying themselves in knots. Sarah laughed. Look how far you've come, Zex. No scanners, no experiments, just genuine interaction. Although, Jake added with a mischievous grin, I did notice you taking vital sign readings with your third eye. Force of habit, Zex quickly adjusted his eye focus, making Lyra laugh melodically. As they all chatted together, Zex realized something profound. All his previous research, all his experiments and data collection had never made him feel the way he did right now. Nervous, excited, and completely unable to maintain proper scientific objectivity. Later that evening, as Zex prepared for his research outing with Lyra, he made one final entry in his old research journal. Final conclusion. The most accurate way to understand relationships is to experience them. All previous experimental data hereby declared irrelevant. Beginning new phase of personal research. No protocols, no measurements, no love-o-meters required. He paused, then added, though perhaps one small scanner wouldn't hurt. Don't even think about it, Jake called from across the room. Zex's spots turned a happy shade of gold as he put away his journal. Sometimes the best scientific discovery was learning to stop being so scientific. And as he left to meet Lyra, he realized he finally understood what his human friends had been trying to teach him all along. Some things in life were better left unmeasured.